He thought he could sell everything, even my past. But Steve forgot one thing: whose name is on the deed, mine. And if he wants to turn my father's house into merchandise, I'll turn their betrayal into the final lesson. They don't know I've been preparing for this moment. This time, I'm not just taking back the house. I'm taking back everything they tried to steal from me, my heritage, my memories, my father's legacy. The game ends now, and I hold all the cards. My name is Rachel Miller, and I'm 35 years old. As I sit in my corner office at Everstone Technologies in downtown Portland, staring at lines of code that usually captivate me, my mind keeps drifting back to that house, Dad's house, standing proudly on Maple Street in Willow Creek. Dad wasn't just a builder. David Miller was an artist who worked with wood and stone. He founded Miller Construction when I was 5, turning it from a one-man operation into a respected firm that restored historic homes throughout Oregon. But his masterpiece was our own home, a 1920s craftsman he bought as a wreck and transformed with his own hands over 15 years. I remember being 8 years old, holding the flashlight while he worked late into the night, explaining every decision. "See this oak banister, sweetheart? It's original 1923. We're not replacing it. We're honoring it." His callous hands would guide mine along the grain, teaching me to feel the soul of the wood. Every salvaged tile, every restored window frame had a story, and he made sure I knew them all. The house became our shared language. While other fathers and daughters bonded over sports or music, we had Saturday mornings in his workshop. The smell of sawdust and linseed oil, blueprints spread across his massive oak desk. He taught me to read architectural plans before I could properly write cursive. "This house will be yours someday, Rachel," he'd say, pencil behind his ear, that gentle smile creasing his weathered face. "But more than the house, I'm giving you the knowledge to preserve it." He documented everything. 3 filing cabinets in his study held photographs of every renovation stage, receipts for every material, permits for every modification. He created a preservation manual, 100 pages detailing the history of each room, maintenance schedules, preferred contractors, even the exact shade of cream for the exterior trim. "A house like this needs a guardian, not just an owner," he explained. The cancer came fast. Pancreatic. 4 months from diagnosis to the end. Those last weeks, when he could barely stand, he still insisted on one final walkthrough of each room. At every doorway, he'd pause, his frail hand on my shoulder. "The master bedroom ceiling, remember it needs replastering every 20 years. The basement foundation, check for cracks each spring. The attic insulation." His voice would fade, but his eyes remained sharp, urgent, making sure I absorbed every word. "I've taken care of everything legally," he whispered that last week, fumbling for my hand. "The deed, it's in your name. It has been for 5 years. Your mother knows. But just in case she remarries, the house stays yours. Promise me you'll take care of it." I promised. Of course, I promised. After the funeral, Mom and I would sit in his study, surrounded by his things, his drafting tools, his coffee-stained notebooks, the framed photo of the 3 of us at the house's restoration completion party. We'd cry together, laugh at memories, find comfort in the space he'd created. But grief is a strange architect. It rebuilds people in unexpected ways. Mom started attending a grief support group at First Methodist. "It helps," she said, and I was glad. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects, coding until my eyes burned, anything to avoid the emptiness. 6 months later, she mentioned someone named Steve Harper. "He lost his wife 2 years ago. He understands." Her voice carried something I hadn't heard since Dad died, a lightness, maybe even hope. I should have been happy for her. I wanted to be happy for her, but when she brought him to the house for dinner that first time, something felt wrong. Maybe it was how his eyes swept the rooms, calculating. Maybe it was how he commented on the prime real estate value before asking about Dad's restoration work. Or maybe it was simply that he was standing in Dad's kitchen, using Dad's coffee mug, sitting in Dad's chair. "Your father did beautiful work," Steve said, running his hand along the built-in china cabinet. "It must be worth a fortune now." I watched him assess our home like a spreadsheet, reducing Dad's artistry to market value, and I knew this man didn't see what Dad had built. He saw what he could sell. Steve Harper moved fast. That should have been my first warning. Within 3 months of meeting Mom at that grief support group, he was at our house 3 nights a week. Within 6 months, he'd convinced her to redecorate to help me move forward. "It's not healthy holding on to everything," Mom said, boxing up Dad's drafting tools. Her hair was different now, cut short and dyed a shade of blonde that didn't suit her. She'd started wearing bright colors instead of her usual earth tones, and heels that clicked importantly on Dad's restored hardwood floors. "Steve says I need to embrace my new chapter." Steve says, everything was about what Steve says. He was 58, with silver hair, and the kind of aggressive confidence that filled every room. A retired pharmaceutical sales manager, he claimed, though his stories about his career never quite aligned. He had 2 adult children from his previous marriage, Jason, 30, who lived in his van and called himself an entrepreneur, and Lily, 32, a yoga instructor, who posted inspirational quotes on Instagram between requests for money. "My kids are dying to see the house," Steve announced one evening, uninvited as usual, helping himself to Dad's scotch. "Jason's great with renovations. He could modernize this place." "It doesn't need modernizing," I said. "It's a historic craftsman. Dad restored it to period specifications." Steve's smile was patronizing. "That's sweet, Rachel. But times change. Your mom deserves a fresh start." Mom touched his arm. "Steve's just trying to help, honey." The way she looked at him, desperate, clinging, like he was a life raft in her ocean of grief, made my stomach turn. This wasn't love. This was fear of being alone, and Steve knew exactly how to exploit it. 8 months after Dad's death, Mom made her announcement. We were sitting in the breakfast nook Dad had built, autumn light filtering through the original wavy glass windows. "Steve and I are getting married." The words hung between us like a blade. "Mom, you've known him for 6 months. When you're our age, you don't have time to waste." She twisted the engagement ring, a gaudy cluster of diamonds, nothing like the simple solitaire Dad had given her. "And there's more. Steve and his children need a place to stay. They are moving in next week." "Moving in here? Where else? This house is too big for just me." "It's not just your house, Mom. Dad left it." "I know what David did with the deed," she interrupted, her voice sharp. "But I'm still your mother, and I still live here. Steve will be my husband. That makes this his home, too." I wanted to scream that Steve wasn't Dad, would never be Dad, that he had no right to even breathe the air in Dad's workshop. But Mom looked so fragile, so different from the strong woman who'd helped Dad sand floors and select tile. Grief had hollowed her out, and Steve had filled the empty spaces with his presence. They married at City Hall 2 weeks later. I wasn't invited. "We wanted it simple," Mom explained over the phone. "Steve doesn't like fuss." The day Steve moved in, he arrived with a U-Haul and his children. Jason immediately claimed Dad's study, dumping his gaming setup on the antique desk. Lily took the guest room I had painted together last spring, covering the walls with tapestries and crystals. Family meeting, Steve announced that first evening, gathering us in the living room like he was conducting a board meeting. "We need to establish some ground rules. This is a family home now, not a museum. Karen and I have plans to update things, make them more functional. Update? I repeated. The workshop's being converted to a gym, Jason said, not looking up from his phone. I need space for my CrossFit equipment. The kitchen needs a total remodel, Lily added. All that old wood is depressing. I looked at Mom, waiting for her to object. She studied her hands. Change is good, she whispered. Steve smiled, the expression of a man who just closed a profitable deal. Glad we are all on the same page. Oh, and Rachel, since you have your own place, maybe limit your visits to weekends. We need space to bond as a family. In my father's house, at my father's table, this stranger was telling me when I could visit, and my mother sat silent, her new wedding ring catching the light from the Tiffany lamp Dad had restored himself, pretending this was normal. That night, I drove home to my apartment and pulled out the documents Dad had left with his lawyer. The deed was clear, the house was mine. But looking at those papers, I realized Dad had known something I was only beginning to understand. He hadn't just been preserving a house, he'd been protecting it from exactly this. The destruction began 3 weeks after they moved in. I arrived for my approved Saturday visit to find Jason in Dad's workshop, a sledgehammer in his hands, surrounded by the splintered remains of the built-in oak shelving Dad and I had installed when I was 12. The air was thick with sawdust, not the sweet, purposeful dust of creation, but the bitter dust of demolition. What the hell are you doing? Jason barely glanced up, earbuds in, head bobbing to music I couldn't hear. Making room for my equipment, he gestured to boxes labeled with CrossFit gear brands. These old shelves were eating up floor space. Those shelves were handcrafted. Dad spent 3 months on them. He shrugged and swung again. The sound of splitting wood felt like a physical blow. I found Lily in the dining room, paint roller in hand, covering the restored Douglas fir wainscoting with flat white paint. The careful grain, the honey-colored warmth Dad had revealed through patient stripping and staining, disappearing under generic apartment white. Stop. That's original 1920s woodwork. She didn't even pause. It made the room feel dark. Steve says white opens things up, makes it more marketable. Marketable? Well, yeah. This place will sell for way more with modern updates. My blood went cold. This house isn't for sale. Lily's laugh was tinkling, dismissive. Everything's for sale at the right price, Steve says. I didn't wait to hear what Steve said. I stormed through the house, cataloging damage like a war correspondent. The antique brass hardware on the kitchen cabinets had been replaced with cheap nickel pulls from Home Depot. The vintage hex tiles in the powder room, painstakingly sourced from salvage yards, were being pried up, many cracking in the process. I found Steve and Dad's study, feeding documents into a shredder. What are you destroying now? He looked up calmly. Just old paperwork, receipts for renovations from years ago. No point keeping clutter. I lunged for the papers, recognizing Dad's handwriting, his meticulous records. Steve blocked me, his hand firm on my shoulder. Rachel, you need to accept reality. This is our home now. Your father is gone. Get your hands off me. He stepped back, but his smile remained. You're emotional. Understandable, but you need to move on. Your mother has. I found Mom in the master bedroom sorting through Dad's clothes. His favorite flannel shirt was in the donation pile. Mom, they are destroying everything. She didn't look at me. They are making improvements. Improvements. They are erasing Dad. Your father is dead, Rachel. She spun around, eyes blazing with something I didn't recognize. He's gone, and I'm still here, and I need to live. Steve makes me feel alive again. Why can't you be happy for me? Because Steve is using you. Can't you see what he's doing? What he's doing is loving me, supporting me, being here for me, her voice cracked. Which is more than you've done. You just show up to criticize and judge. I'm trying to protect what Dad built. No, you're trying to keep me frozen in the past. Steve's right. You want this house to be a shrine, but I can't live in a shrine. Rachel, I won't. That evening, Steve called another family meeting. He'd prepared a presentation on his laptop. Actual slides titled Maximizing Property Value. The house needs a complete overhaul, he announced. New kitchen, opened floor plan, get rid of all this dark wood. I've already had a realtor friend give me estimates. With the right updates, we could flip this place for 3 times what David put into it. This house is not for sale, I said firmly. Steve's eyes glinted. Everything's negotiable, Rachel. Your mother and I are thinking about our retirement. Maybe a condo in Florida, Mom. I looked at her, desperate for any sign of the woman who'd spent years helping Dad restore this place. She wouldn't meet my eyes. It's a lot of maintenance, honey. Maybe something smaller would be better. If you want something smaller, fine, move. But this house stays in the family. Dad wanted. David's not here, Steve cut in. His mask finally slipped, revealing the ugliness beneath. I'm the man of this house now, and I say we are modernizing. Don't like it. Don't visit. I stood up slowly. You're right. Dad's not here, but his lawyer is. Steve's face flushed. What's that supposed to mean? It means you should be more careful about what documents you shred. Some of them might be important. I left them sitting there, Steve's presentation still glowing on his laptop screen. Each slide another violation of everything Dad had built. In my car, I called Mark Bennett, Dad's lawyer and old friend. Mark, they're destroying the house. Is there anything we can do? His voice was calm, reassuring. Rachel, your father was a smart man. Very smart. Come to my office Monday morning. Bring any documentation you have about the changes they are making. I spent Sunday with my camera documenting every alteration, every destruction. Jason's gym equipment crushing the workshop floors. Lily's paint covering century-old wood. The pile of original fixtures in the garbage. They thought they were erasing Dad's legacy. They had no idea they were building my case. Mark Bennett's office hadn't changed since I was a child, the same leather chairs, the same wall of law books, the same photo of him and Dad at a construction site, both grinning and covered in dust. Mark himself looked older, grayer, but his eyes were sharp as ever when I walked in Monday morning. Rachel, I'm sorry about what's happening. Your father would be livid. Can we stop them? He pulled out a thick folder marked D. Miller, Estate Planning, and spread its contents across his desk. Your father came to me 5 years ago, right after his first cancer scare. The one he didn't tell anyone about. What? False alarm. Turned out to be nothing. But it spooked him. He said, Mark, I need to protect my daughter's inheritance. Karen's wonderful, but she's too trusting. If something happens to me. Mark adjusted his glasses. He transferred the deed entirely to you that same week, free and clear. Your mother has lifetime residency rights, but no ownership. My hands shook as I read the deed. There it was in black and white, Rachel Elizabeth Miller, sole owner. There's more, Mark continued, pulling out another document. He added very specific covenants. No structural modifications without written consent from the owner. That's you. No sale, mortgage, or lien can be placed without your signature. And this is the important part, any unauthorized modifications or attempts to sell constitute grounds for immediate eviction. Even my mother, your mother, retains the right to live there. But Steve, his children, their guests, and guests who destroy property can be removed. I showed him the photos on my phone. Mark's face darkened with each swipe. This is vandalism, destruction of property. We can file for an emergency injunction today to stop any further damage. But Rachel, you need to understand, if we pursue this, things will get ugly. They are already ugly. He nodded. Then let's discuss strategy. Steve's not stupid. He's probably planning something. Mark was right. That afternoon, I got a call from my mother. Steve found a buyer, she said breathlessly. A developer who will pay cash, $2 million. Rachel, we could split it. You could buy your own house. Start fresh. Mom, Steve can't sell the house. He doesn't own it. But I do. I'm David's widow. No. Mom, you don't. Dad transferred the deed to me 5 years ago. Silence. Then, that's impossible. I would have known. He did it to protect the house, to protect me. Check with Mark Bennett if you don't believe me. The line went dead. An hour later, my phone exploded with calls and texts. Steve, Mom, even Jason and Lily. I didn't answer. Instead, I met with Mark to file the injunction. That evening, Steve showed up at my apartment. I watched through the peephole as he pounded on the door. I know you're in there, Rachel. We need to talk business. You're sitting on a gold mine. Don't be stupid. I called building security. As they escorted him out, he shouted, "You can't keep that house empty forever. Your mother needs the money." Mark called the next morning. Steve's been busy. He's contacted 3 different real estate agencies trying to list the house. I've sent cease and desist letters to all of them. Can he really think he'll get away with this? He's desperate. I did some digging. Steve Harper has significant debts, credit cards, a failed business venture, back taxes. He needs money, and he saw your mother as his meal ticket. The pieces clicked into place. The quick courtship, the pressure to marry, the immediate move into the house, the rush to renovate and sell. He targeted her, I said. Widows at grief support groups, it's more common than you'd think. But your father made sure Steve would hit a wall, a legal wall named Rachel Miller. Over the next week, I documented everything through a private investigator Mark recommended. I learned even more. Steve had done this before, married a widow in Sacramento 3 years ago. That house was sold within 6 months of the wedding. The widow, now divorced, was living with her sister, her inheritance gone. I also discovered Steve had already taken out loans using the house as collateral, or trying to. 3 different lenders had applications in process, all fraudulent, all claiming he was the owner. This is fraud, Mark said. Criminal fraud. We are not just talking civil court anymore. Friday afternoon, I received a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Mom crying with Jason's arm around her. The message read, "Your mother is heartbroken. Stop this now or she'll never forgive you." Then came Lily's social media campaign, Instagram posts about toxic family members, and when children become abusers. She even started a GoFundMe titled, "Help my family save our home from a heartless daughter." But I had my own ammunition. The private investigator had found Jason's criminal record, petty theft, fraud, a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend. Lily had been sued twice for rent non-payment. These weren't just opportunists. They were practically professionals. Sunday morning, Steve made his biggest mistake. He brought a locksmith to change the locks on the house. The locksmith, thankfully, demanded ownership documentation. When Steve couldn't provide it, the man left. But Steve's attempt was captured on the neighbor's security camera. Another piece of evidence. We have enough, Mark said. More than enough. We can file criminal charges for attempted fraud, file for immediate eviction, and get a restraining order. But Rachel, once we do this, there's no going back. Your relationship with your mother. I thought about Dad, about his careful plans, his protective love. He'd known this might happen. He'd prepared for it. File everything, I said. It's time to take back my house. The family war began in earnest on Monday morning. I woke to 47 missed calls and twice as many text messages. My social media had been bombarded overnight. Lily had escalated her campaign, posting photos of Mom looking frail and devastated with captions like "Elderly abuse is real," and "When greed matters more than family." My cousin Patricia, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, left a voicemail. "Rachel, how could you do this to Aunt Karen? She just found happiness again, and you're destroying it. You should be ashamed." The texts ranged from disappointed to vicious. "Your father would be disgusted with you. Steve gave your mom a reason to live, and you're taking it away. Selfish. That house should be your mother's. I always knew you were cold. But this is cruel." Mom's friends from her book club. Neighbors who'd known us for years. Even my high school English teacher. Steve had mobilized them all. He'd painted a picture of a grieving widow being tormented by her heartless daughter, who wanted to steal her home. Tuesday brought the prayer circle. 15 members of Mom's church gathered on my apartment building steps, led by Steve, holding hands and praying loudly for Rachel's heart to be softened. Local news showed up. Steve, looking every inch the concerned stepfather, told the reporter, "We just want family peace. My wife is devastated that her daughter would try to evict her from her marital home. I stayed inside, curtains drawn, working from home while Mark handled the legal filings, but Steve's campaign was taking its toll. My manager at Everstone called, concerned. Rachel, someone sent an email to the entire executive team about your family situation. They are claiming you're abusing your mother. I don't believe it, but HR wants to discuss this." The HR meeting was humiliating, explaining that my stepfather was trying to steal my inheritance while they'd been forwarded photos of my mother crying. Claims that I was mentally unstable, that I'd threatened violence. I had to provide Mark's contact information, prove I was the victim, not the aggressor. Wednesday, Mom called from a number I didn't recognize. "Rachel, please," her voice was broken, barely a whisper. "Everyone's talking about us. The whole congregation knows. Mrs. Patterson won't even look at me. They think I'm a terrible mother who raised a monster. Mom, Steve is manipulating. Just give him the house. I don't care anymore. I just want this to stop. Mom, he's using you. He has debts. He's done this before. Stop lying about him. Steve loves me. He's the only one who cares about me since your father died. That's not true. You haven't been here, Rachel. You buried yourself in work and left me alone. Steve was here. Steve held me when I cried. Steve made me want to wake up in the morning." The pain in her voice was real. Even if the narrative wasn't. "Mom, I love you, but Steve is. If you loved me, you'd stop this. You'd let me be happy." She hung up. Thursday brought escalation. Lily organized a "Support Karen Miller" rally outside my office building. 20 people with signs, "Stop elder abuse, daughters should love, not litigate, greed kills families." Security escorted me out the back entrance, but photos were already circulating online. My professional reputation, carefully built over a decade, was crumbling. That night, exhausted and isolated, I almost broke. Almost called Mark to drop everything. Then I found an email in my drafts folder, one I'd never written. Steve had somehow accessed my account, probably when I'd used Mom's computer weeks ago. The draft addressed to Mark said I was dropping all legal action and agreeing to sell the house. He was trying to impersonate me. I called Mark immediately. He's getting desperate. This is good. Actually, more evidence of fraud. Friday, the narrative shifted slightly. A reporter had done actual investigating, discovering Steve's previous marriage and the house sale, but Steve was ready with a response. My first wife and I made a mutual decision to downsize. These accusations are just Rachel trying to deflect from her abuse of her mother. The worst part was Mom believed him. Every lie, every manipulation. Or maybe she had to believe him. The alternative, that she'd married a con man who saw her as nothing but a payday, would destroy her. Saturday morning. I woke to silence. No calls, no texts, the calm before the storm. Then Mark called. Steve's arranged an intervention tomorrow, Sunday, at the house. He's invited extended family, friends, your mother's pastor. He wants to pressure you into signing papers he's drawn up. Not legally binding, of course, but he's hoping you'll cave to the emotional manipulation. Should I go? Actually, yes. But not alone. I'll be there, and I'm bringing backup. Backup. The private investigator found Steve's ex-wife from Sacramento, Margaret Hamilton. She's willing to come, tell her story. She's been following the news and reached out to us. I'll come, she said, and I quote, I couldn't save myself, but maybe I can save another woman from that parasite. I spent Saturday night preparing, not just documents and evidence, but emotionally. Steve had turned my family against me. Made me a villain in my mother's story. Tomorrow, I'd have to shatter Mom's illusions completely. Dad's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes, protecting what you love means being willing to be hated for it. Somehow he'd known it might come to this, and he'd given me the tools to fight back. The intervention was set for 2 p.m. Sunday. Steve expected me to walk into an ambush, surrounded by people he'd turned against me, forced to choose between my inheritance and my family relationships. He had no idea I was bringing my own ammunition. The revelation came 2 days before the planned intervention, and it changed everything. Mark called me Saturday morning, his voice electric with urgency. Rachel, you need to come to my office now. When I arrived, he had papers spread across his conference table. His assistant was making copies while his paralegal typed furiously on a laptop. Steve made a fatal mistake, Mark said without preamble. He actually signed a purchase agreement with a developer 2 days ago. But he can't. He forged your signature. But here's the kicker, he also forged your mother's. He signed as her power of attorney, which he isn't and has never been. My legs felt weak. He sold my house. He tried to, the developer, Pinnacle Properties, already transferred a deposit of $100,000 to an account Steve opened under Miller Family Trust, which doesn't exist. This isn't just fraud anymore. Rachel, this is wire fraud, forgery, identity theft, federal crimes. How did you find out? The developer's lawyer did a title search and found your name on the deed. They called me since I'm listed as the estate attorney. They are furious. They want their deposit back, but Steve's already moved most of it. Where? Paid off credit cards, sent money to Jason and Lily, and get this, put a deposit on a condo in Florida in his name only. The room spun. He was going to take the money and run, leaving your mother with nothing. The paper trail is clear. He never intended to share any proceeds with her. Mark's paralegal looked up from her screen. There's more. Steve's been corresponding with the developer for weeks, promising vacant possession by month's end. He told them the current occupant, that would be your mother, was being placed in assisted living. Assisted living. I felt sick. He was going to put Mom in a home. I found the applications, the paralegal continued. 3 different facilities, the cheapest ones that accept Medicaid. He forged her signature on those, too. I sank into a chair. This was worse than I'd imagined. Steve wasn't just after the house. He was planning to discard Mom entirely once he had the money. We need to tell Mom. She needs to know. Mark nodded. The FBI is already involved because of the wire fraud. They'll be arresting Steve Monday morning. But Rachel, we can use this information tomorrow at the intervention. Turn his ambush into ours. I spent Saturday night with the evidence, creating a presentation on my laptop, screenshots of Steve's emails to the developer, the forged documents, the money transfers, the assisted living applications. Each slide was a nail in Steve's coffin. Margaret Hamilton, Steve's ex-wife, arrived Saturday evening. She was 63, dignified despite the pain in her eyes. He destroyed me, she said simply. Sold my home, spent my savings, then divorced me once the money ran out. Left me with nothing but debt. Your mother, she seems like a nice woman from what I've seen online. She doesn't deserve this. Will you tell your story tomorrow? Every detail. I've been waiting 3 years for justice. This is close enough. Sunday came grey and drizzly. Fitting weather for a family demolition. I arrived at the house at 1:45, 15 minutes before the scheduled intervention. Cars already lined the street. Mom's book club. Church friends. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Steve had assembled an army. But I had my own forces, Mark, his paralegal with a laptop and projector, Margaret Hamilton, and surprisingly, the developer's lawyer, Thomas Chen, who'd insisted on coming. I want to look this con artist in the eye, he'd said. The living room had been arranged like a tribunal, chairs in a circle, tissue strategically placed. Photos of Mom and Steve looking happy on the mantel, right where Dad's architecture awards used to be. Steve stood as I entered, playing the concerned patriarch. Rachel, thank you for coming. We all love you and want to help you through this difficult. Cut the performance, Steve. I set up the projector. I have something everyone needs to see. This is not what we agreed, Steve sputtered. You're right. You planned an ambush, but plans change. I clicked to the first slide, the purchase agreement with my forged signature. Like your plan to sell my house without my knowledge. Gasps rippled through the room. That's not. Steve's confidence cracked. I clicked through the evidence methodically, the forged signatures, the secret bank account, the money transfers. With each slide, the room grew quieter, the atmosphere shifting from judgment of me to horror at Steve. When I reached the assisted living applications, Mom stood up, shaking. What is this? Her voice was barely a whisper. These are applications Steve filed to put you in a nursing home, Mom. The cheapest ones available. He forged your signature. That's preposterous. Steve boomed. Karen, she's lying. Manipulating. Then explain this. Thomas Chen stood up, pulled out his phone. This is a recorded call between you and my client discussing the sale. Should I play it? Steve's voice filled the room from the phone speaker. The old lady won't be a problem. I'll have her out by the end of the month. She's going into care. Already has some dementia, you know. Won't even remember the house in 6 months. Mom's face went white. I don't have dementia. Of course not, Steve said quickly. I was just telling them what they wanted to hear. Like you told me what I wanted to hear, Mom's voice grew stronger. That you loved me. That we'd grow old together. Margaret Hamilton stood up. May I say something? She told her story quietly, devastating in its simplicity. The courtship, the marriage, the systematic draining of accounts, the abandoned divorce once the money was gone. The house in Sacramento sold for $1.8 million, she concluded. I never saw a penny. Check his records. Where did that money go? Jason and Lily had been silent throughout, but now Jason stood. Dad, what the F********. You said she was lying about the house being hers. You said we were helping. Shut up, Jason. Steve's mask had completely fallen. But Jason continued, you promised us each $200,000 from the sale. Was any of this real? The FBI arrived at 2:47 p.m. Just as Steve was trying to leave, they arrested him in the driveway in full view of the neighbors. He tried to turn against me. The silence after the FBI left was deafening. The intervention guests scattered like startled birds, unable to meet my eyes or Mom's. The righteous anger they'd brought dissolved into embarrassment and hasty exits. Within 15 minutes, only family remained. Mom sat on Dad's leather chair, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Jason paced near the window while Lily sobbed dramatically on the couch, though I noticed she kept checking her phone, probably watching her Support Karen Miller campaign implode in real time. Get out, Mom said, quietly. Jason stopped pacing. Karen, we didn't know. Get out. The force of her scream made us all jump. Both of you pack your things and get out of my husband's house. But we have nowhere, Lily started. I don't care. You have 1 hour. They scrambled upstairs. We could hear drawers slamming. Arguments between them about whose fault this was. Mom didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the spot where Steve had been standing when the FBI read him his rights. Mom, I said softly. Don't, she held up her hand. Just don't. Mark cleared his throat. Karen, Rachel, I'll need you both to come to my office tomorrow to sort through the legal implications. Steve accessed joint accounts. There might be some financial recovery possible. Mom laughed bitterly. Joint accounts. I gave him access to everything. David's life insurance, his pension survivor benefits. I trusted him with everything. How much? I asked. $43,000. Gone in 8 months. My stomach dropped. Dad had made sure Mom would be comfortable. Steve had destroyed that security. Jason and Lily left without goodbye, their cars loaded with hastily packed boxes. The house felt hollow in their wake, like it was exhaling after holding its breath for months. Mom finally looked at me. You knew this whole time. You knew what he was. I suspected, but Mom, you wouldn't listen. No. I wouldn't. She stood, walked to the window where she could see Dad's workshop. I was so lonely, Rachel. So desperately lonely. And he knew exactly what to say, didn't he? How I was still young, still beautiful, deserved happiness, everything I needed to hear. Mom, I betrayed your father. Her voice broke. Not by remarrying, but by letting that man destroy what David built. By choosing a stranger over my own daughter. You were grieving. That's not an excuse. She turned to face me, tears streaming. I let him convince me you were the enemy. My own daughter trying to protect me. And I called you selfish, cold-hearted. I let my friends attack you. I sat silent while he destroyed your reputation. We can rebuild. Can we? I chose him over you publicly, repeatedly. How do you forgive that? I didn't have an answer. The hurt was real. Deep, potentially permanent. But looking at her, really looking, I saw what Dad must have seen that day he transferred the deed. A woman he loved who could be manipulated by grief. He protected the house because he couldn't protect her from herself. The next morning, Mark's office was controlled chaos. FBI agents needed statements. The developer's lawyer needed documentation. Financial forensics experts tracked Steve's money trail. He's looking at 15 to 20 years, the lead FBI agent told us. The wire fraud alone is 10. Add identity theft, forgery, elder abuse. He's done. Elder abuse? Mom asked. The assisted living applications, the lies about dementia, taking money from a vulnerable widow, textbook. Elder abuse. Mom flinched at vulnerable widow. We learned more throughout the day. Steve had 3 previous marriages we hadn't known about. Each followed the same pattern, widowed women, quick courtship, financial devastation. He'd been doing this for 15 years. You're victim number 4 that we know of, the agent said. There might be more. That afternoon, back at the house, Mom and I surveyed the damage, the destroyed workshop, the painted-over woodwork, the broken tiles. Months of Steve's improvements had undone years of Dad's careful restoration. It'll cost thousands to fix, I said. I'll pay for it. With what? Steve took everything. Mom was quiet for a moment. I still have my engagement ring from your father. The one I stopped wearing when Steve gave me his. It's in the safety deposit box he didn't know about. A good jeweler might give us enough to start repairs. Mom, no. Dad gave you that to show his love, and what better way to honor that love than to restore what he built? She touched the painted wainscoting. Besides, I think David would enjoy the irony, his ring fixing Steve's damage. We worked in silence for a while, making lists of what needed repair. Then Mom spoke again. I've been thinking about what Margaret Hamilton said about not remembering the house in 6 months. Steve really thought I'd forget this place. Forget David. Forget everything that mattered. He underestimated you. No, Rachel. He underestimated you. You fought when I wouldn't. You stood firm when everyone turned against you. You protected Dad's legacy and saved me from myself. Dad protected it. He saw this coming. Maybe. Or maybe he just knew his daughter well enough to know you'd fight for what mattered, even if it cost you everything else. That evening, as we sat in the kitchen, Steve had wanted to gut. Mom pulled out a box from the pantry, Dad's recipe cards. The one Steve had thrown in the trash, but she'd secretly saved. Pot roast, she asked. The way Dad liked it. Yeah, I said. That sounds perfect. As she cooked, filling the house with familiar smells, I thought about the last 2 weeks, the public humiliation, the family betrayal, the legal battles. It had been a war, and wars leave scars. But we'd won. The house was safe. Steve was facing justice. Mom was free. The victory tasted bitter, though trust, once broken, doesn't magically repair itself. The extended family, who'd attacked me, wouldn't suddenly apologize. Mom's friends who'd chosen Steve's side wouldn't forget their stance. My reputation at work would take months to rebuild. Rachel, Mom said suddenly, move back home, at least temporarily. Mom, I don't think. Please, this house is too big for one person, and it needs someone who understands its value, someone who will help me restore it properly, the way David would want. I thought about my apartment, my independent life, the distance I'd maintained even before Steve arrived. We can't go backward, Mom. No, but we can go forward differently. Better, maybe. Outside, rain began falling, washing the dust from the windows Steve had wanted to replace with modern vinyl. The original glass, wavy and imperfect, threw rainbows across the floor when the sunset broke through the clouds. Dad would have loved that detail. Beauty in the imperfection, strength in the age, value in the preservation. Okay, I said, but we do the restoration right. Everything back to Dad's standards. Mom smiled. The first real smile I'd seen in months. Your father's daughter. Always, I said. Always. The 14th day arrived with unexpected sunshine. I stood at the living room window, watching Steve's rental truck pull away from the curb. Jason loaded the last box while Lily sat in her car, engine running, not even bothering to help. Neither looked back at the house they tried to steal. Mom stood beside me, silent. She hadn't spoken to them since the FBI arrest. Hadn't answered their calls from jail when Steve made bail. Hadn't responded to Lily's manipulative texts about being pregnant and homeless. The woman who once defended them against me had become stone. It's done, she said quietly. Mark had worked efficiently. The eviction was uncontested. Steve's lawyer advised him not to fight it, not with federal charges pending. The restraining order was comprehensive. Steve, Jason, and Lily couldn't come within 500 feet of the property or contact us in any way. The house felt different with them gone, lighter, despite the damage they'd left behind. The workshop still bore Jason's sledgehammer scars. The dining room wall still wore Lily's cheap white paint, but it was ours again. The contractor comes tomorrow, I said. He thinks we can restore most of the original woodwork. With what money? Mom asked. I told you I'd sell Dad's ring, but no need. I pulled out my phone and showed her the GoFundMe page. Remember Lily's campaign against me? I started my own. Help restore a craftsman home destroyed by a con artist. We've raised $30,000 in 3 days. Mom's eyes widened. Who? Everyone who attacked me is now donating to apologize. Mrs. Patterson gave $5,000. Your book club collectively gave $8,000. Even that reporter who ambushed me donated and wrote an article about elder fraud. They are trying to buy forgiveness. Let them. Dad would appreciate the irony, their guilt funding his house's restoration. We spent the morning planning. The workshop would be first, restored exactly as Dad had it, using his own preserved blueprints. The dining room would take months to strip and refinish, but I'd found a craftsman who specialized in historical restoration. It won't be exactly the same, the contractor had warned. No, I'd agreed. But Dad believed in honoring the bones of something while making it stronger. That's what we'll do. That afternoon, Margaret Hamilton called. Steve took a plea deal. 12 years, minimum security. He'll be 70 when he gets out. How do you feel about that? I asked. Like I can finally move forward. I'm selling everything, moving to Portland to be near my daughter. Starting over at 63. She paused. Your mother's lucky to have you. We are working on it. Work hard. Family is all we really have in the end. After she hung up, I found Mom and Dad's study, surrounded by his papers, the ones Steve hadn't managed to shred. I found something, she said, holding up a letter. It's addressed to you, dated a month before he died. My hands shook as I opened it. Rachel, if you're reading this, then I was right to worry. The house is yours now, legally and morally, but more than the house, I'm leaving you the responsibility of protection, not just of property, but of your mother. She's stronger than she knows, but vulnerable in ways she doesn't recognize. She loves completely, trusts too easily. It's what I loved most about her. It's also what scares me most about leaving her. You have my stubbornness, my suspicious nature, my need to document everything. These aren't always pleasant traits, but they are protective ones. Use them. The house will outlive us all if properly maintained. But family is more fragile. Whatever happens, whatever choices your mother makes, remember that grief makes people do desperate things. Be patient with her, even when patience seems impossible. But also be firm. Sometimes protecting someone means letting them hate you for a while. I trust you to know the difference. All my love, Dad. Check the workshop floor. Third plank from the north wall. I left something for the restoration fund, just in case. Mom and I practically ran to the workshop. The third plank was loose, just as Dad described. Underneath, wrapped in plastic, was a manila envelope. Inside were 20 gold coins. American Eagles dated the year I was born. David, you clever bastard, Mom whispered, then laughed through her tears. He really did think of everything. These are worth, Mom. These are worth at least $40,000. The exact amount Steve stole, she said, plus a little extra for pain and suffering. We sat on the workshop floor, despite the dust and damage, holding Dad's final gift. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, highlighting the gouges Jason had left, the history Steve had tried to erase. We'll make it better than it was, Mom said. Not different, better updated systems, reinforced foundation, but keeping Dad's vision together. Together. 6 months later, the house stood transformed. Not back to what it was, but forward to what Dad had always envisioned. The workshop hummed with new life. I'd started teaching woodworking classes there, using Dad's tools and techniques. Mom had turned the guest room into an art studio, finally pursuing the painting she'd abandoned when she married. Steve's trial made national news. 3 more victims came forward. His sentence was extended to 20 years. Jason was doing time for fraud. It turned out he'd been running his own scams. Lily had disappeared to California. Her Instagram now private. Her pregnancy mysteriously never mentioned again. Any regrets? Mom asked one evening as we sat on the restored porch, watching the sunset through the original wavy glass windows we'd had professionally restored. No, I said. You? One, I regret not trusting you sooner, not seeing what you saw. You saw it when it mattered because you forced me to look. We sat in comfortable silence. The house settling around us with familiar creaks. Dad's presence was everywhere, in the restored millwork, the perfectly maintained garden, the workshop that once again smelled of sawdust and possibility. He'd be proud, Mom said, of the house, of you, of us, of what we became through this. I thought about the cost, the family relationships destroyed, the public humiliation, the months of legal battles, but also what we'd gained, truth, justice, and a different kind of trust, one forged in conflict and proven in victory. Dad knew, I said. Somehow he knew we'd need to fight for this, and he made sure we could win. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. He knew his girls, both of us, our weaknesses and our strengths. As darkness fell, the house lights came on, warm, welcoming, safe. The house David Miller built, the house Steve Harper tried to steal. The house Rachel Miller protected. The house that survived. Our home.